Good evening, Internet. Welcome back to another night of Talks About Books for probably far too long. I'm That's Aldous in the background. Tonight we're going to be talking about Edogawa Ranpo's Japanese Tales of Mystery and Imagination. Unfortunately, I don't have like a nice paperback to show you guys. I read it on my e-reader. Back when I was still with my partner Zero, she sent me the EPUB for this, and I've had it sitting in my EPUB library forever. And I just finally got to it recently. I bought this little XTE Ink X4. It is tiny. It's like the size of a cell phone. Not sponsored. It's super convenient. And I've just been working my way through it at work, like in between meetings, or if I finish up my work for the day. I was always one of those kids who was like, if you finish your work early, you can read. And so that's what I do. I go into work, I finish all my work in about an hour and a half, and then I sit there and I watch movies or I read or play games. Like, super convenient to just get all your work done and then get to, spend time for you. Edogawa Ranpo was a Japanese author who very inspired by Edgar Allan Poe and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And so he has this like obsession with like solving mysteries and psychology and all of this stuff. I believe this book was published in the 50s. And so all of this would have been like early, like late in the modernists, like early in the postmodernists. So kind of preceding all of the ultra point of view and disillusionment with the monomyths. And so a lot of these are like very personal, like looking into people. Why do people do strange things? What happens when people go mad? Is there some kind of like mechanism by which people go mad? Are there other worlds that we can catch glimpses of, or is this the only world? He is very much like inspired by Japanese transcendentalism, which I believe is different than American transcendentalism, where like the metaphysics of the world represent changes that affect us and our psychology. There are 9 stories in this collection. The first one is The Human Chair. We start off with an author. She is opening her Daily Mail and she finds a manuscript from somebody. This person is claiming that he is a skilled furniture buildsman. He's a craftsman, and his big claim to fame is that he built a large, luxurious chair for a international hotel. And for some reason, he decided that he wanted to climb into this chair and be able to live in it. And at first, he was going to do this in order to rob the rich people who lived or who stayed at the international hotel. He was going to go grab their valuables while they were distracted, and then he would climb into his chair and nobody would ever be the wiser. However, eventually the international hotel underwent a change in management, and the chair was transferred into the hands of a private owner. The private owner is a businessman who is married to a Japanese author. You can probably see where this is going. So she realizes that this strange craftsman who's living in this chair is living in her chair, and she is aghast at this realization. But before she can decide what she wants to do about this, she gets another piece of mail, and it says, "I'm just kidding. I knew that you had recently come into the possession of this large chair. I thought that it would be fun to scare you with this. I am a very talented author, as you can tell. Please find the rest of my writings at so and so and so." So it's a little bit of one of those like creepy, like, is there somebody living in my house? Tales. And for some reason, Japan seems awash in those, like people living in other people's homes, stealing people, cabinet people. I've heard many stories of this. So you can see how that would kind of get under her skin. The second story is the psychological test. This is a story of a young man who decides that he is going to commit murder in order to get a lot of money from a safe. He figures out that this older woman, she's keeping all of her money in a potted plant in her room. And he decides that he's going to murder her, frame one of his schoolmates for murder, and then he is going to get away with it. His schoolmate seems to be the perfect patsy. Whenever he gets interviewed by the police, he is nervous. He contradicts himself. He does not know how to like keep his story straight and keep himself calm, whereas the killer is calm and collected, and he trains himself to not react emotionally. He trains himself to have reasonable responses to any kind of psychological test that the detectives throw at him. The detective is kind of not sure what to do. He calls one of his old mentors, and the mentor says, "I think I have an idea." And they invite the killer over to their home. It turns out that while he was murdering this old woman, she put her finger through the sliding screen that was in her bedroom. And this is one of the clues that the mentor focuses in on. So the mentor asks him, a couple days before the murder, when you were in her room, speaking with her. We know that you were there speaking with her because you admitted to it. We know that you were there in the room. Do you remember seeing the sliding screen door? And he says, "Yeah, I remember it." And they're like, "Are you sure that you remember it?" And he says, "Yes, I can say without any doubt that I remember that there was a screen in the door. I know that I remember it from when I was speaking with her 2 days ago." And he's like, "Would you sign a paper saying that you swear to this, an affidavit?" And the boy's like, "Yeah, of course, I'll sign an affidavit." So he signs the affidavit, and then the mentor is like, "So the screen that was damaged during the murder, it was only delivered the day before she was murdered. So if you had seen it, if you know that you had seen it, it must have been the day of the murder, not 2 days before." I'm not sure why it's called the psychological test, because he doesn't get caught because of the psychological test. He gets caught because he misremembered. But the psychological test does play a big part in the story. The third story is The Caterpillar. This one is kind of a weird one. It's about the wife of a Japanese soldier who is gravely injured in World War II. He is miraculously saved by surgeons, but he has lost his arms and his legs, and an explosion near him has like messed up his face and left him deaf. And they say dumb throughout the story. I don't think that that's the proper terminology these days, but he's shell-shocked, right? He doesn't think, he's unable to think or express himself in the way that he should. He's deaf. He can't really move around himself. He needs his wife to do pretty much anything. The only faculty that he still has left that he can kind of use to express himself, he has his eyes, and his wife can put a pencil into his mouth, and he can use the pencil in his mouth to write out different symbols that she can read. So he can still talk and he can still see. So throughout the story, she kind of has like, she gets this weird kick out of being his caretaker. He has a patron who is granting them a property on his land. And she goes to visit the patron. And when she comes back, the husband is kind of jealous. He's like, "Where did you go? Why were you gone for so long?" And she's like, "Oh," and she kind of dotes on him and covers him and kisses, and that makes him happy. She gets a weird thrill out of him. She has this strange dream about him as like a lump of flesh, and another like lump of flesh coming and engulfing him. which is a really cool visual. Like, I'm not sure where Ranpo would have seen this, but it's kind of a cool dreamscape that he's created here, where you've got the lump of flesh and then the one covering it. Interesting imagery. But she wakes up in the middle of the night and she looks over at her husband and he is just staring at the ceiling. And she starts talking to him. And of course, he's deaf, so he doesn't hear her. And she kind of works herself into a frenzy. And when he's not responding to her, he's not looking at her. She crawls on top of him and she pokes her fingers into his eyes until he's blind. I guess that's what you do. She feels immediately regretful. She's not like a masochist. She's not a sadist. She's not trying to like hurt him. She's just worked herself up into this frenzy and she doesn't know what to do with it. So she goes, she gets the patron, they go and they get the doctor. They bring the doctor back. The doctor gives him painkillers to numb the pain. And she writes on his chest, "I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'm sorry, please forgive me." And he, of course, can't communicate because the only faculty he has left is the pencil in the mouth, and he can't even see what he's doing with it. So she is racked with guilt. She goes and spends time with the patron once more. When she comes home, the bed is empty. He's nowhere to be found. And she sees on one of the door frames at like the bottom of it, she sees these symbols that he's written on the door frames. It says, "I forgive you." She runs out into the garden and she and the patron start searching for him. One important detail of the story is that there is an uncovered well somewhere on the property. They know that it's dangerous, but they've never covered it. She realizes, what if he's heading for the well? And the two of them head towards the well to try to see if they can stop him. And when they get there, they see this shape in the darkness that looks like a caterpillar. And she realizes that it's her husband. And before they can do anything else, he falls into the well and is lost in the darkness. This is probably the story I'm conflicted the most about because it's an interesting story. Like it's really cool thinking about it, but it feels like it should be more, right? It feels like there should be something there, but it's very much just this explanation or this examination of the woman and her reaction to her husband and her frenzy and his loss of faculties. It feels like it should be bigger, right? The next one is The Cliff. I really like The Cliff. It's kind of presented as like a stage play. There's two characters. There's a man and a woman. The woman is recalling that she had a previous husband. Turns out that the man is her second husband, and he's a little bit jealous of what was going on with her first husband. But she is telling this tale of what happened to her first husband. He had got it into his mind that he was going to murder the girl. And she realized that he was going to do this, and she became paranoid. She confided in the second husband, who was just a traveling artist living in their house at the time. She confided in him, and the second husband confided in her. Your husband is having an affair, right? So she realizes that her first husband is going to murder her. Around this time, she starts seeing her first husband dressed up in this weird costume. He looks like he's wearing a flamboyant, colorful cloak. He's wearing glasses. I think he might have a fake mustache, like comically suspicious. And the second husband informs her that he has a gun in the house as well, and she knows where he keeps the gun. And so she devises that her first husband is going to come in one night dressed as the stranger and with the suspicious coat, with the suspicious glasses and fake mustache. He's going to murder her. It's going to be like he himself is on a business trip and a stranger has come and murdered her. And then when he comes home, he can pretend that he was away on a business trip and this mysterious stranger murdered her. So she takes the gun out of his desk. When he goes on his business trip, she sleeps with it. He comes into her bedroom dressed in this getup, and she shoots him. He dies, and when the police come, he told the police what he knew, the mistress, the gun, all of it, and the police realized, okay, she acted in self-defense. And so that gets her off the hook. But this... the scene that we get caught up with where they are retelling this is at a resort by a cliff. She is telling him this story and he starts getting nervous. And she says, I realized something recently. I realized that you were the one that put this idea of murder into both of our heads. You were the one that convinced my late husband to try to murder me for my money. And now you want my money as well. And so I know that you are soon going to try to murder me as well. And so she stands up and she walks over to this cliff face. And while she is standing there, he goes and he tries to shove her off the cliff face because she's realized what he's trying to do. And she just sidesteps him and he goes flying over the edge. So she's had two husbands and she has killed both of them. And in both cases, she is going to get off scot-free with it because in the first case it was self-defense and in the second case it was probably an accident. It seems like he pushed himself off the ledge, doesn't it? So she, I think at the end she says something like, maybe I'm cursed, maybe I'm a Black Widow. But it's really a well-told story and it has a nice flow to it. The Hell of Mirrors. This one is good, but it is weird. A lot of the stories are told in this very 1950s, straightforward, you know this, and thus you know this, and thus you know this type of writing. The Hell of Mirrors is this record of a guy who, in his school days, he met a strange, heir to this fortune who was obsessed with lenses, and he loved funhouse mirrors and he loved microscopes and he loved all of these different types of lenses. And so he became obsessed with building his own lenses, and he never had to work because he had money. And so he was able to create his own lenses. And those are what kind of kept him going, on his growth into an adult. He would devise his own lenses. One of them was so that he could spy on the maids at his estate. So he just has this periscope where he can spy on the maids, which is creepy. Another one is he has a projection of himself up on the wall. So kind of like the Wizard of Oz, he goes into this little booth and he projects his face up onto the wall. And he has requisitioned one special thing for him, and it's this glass ball that's the size of a person, and inside it's a perfectly spherical mirror. So he has requisitioned this. The friend comes one night because the master is missing and because there is this strange ball that seems to be rotating in the middle of his laboratory. And so he goes and he puts his ear up to the strange ball and he hears something inside, and he realizes that his friend is inside of this strange mirror ball. And so he takes a sledgehammer and he breaks open the ball and the friend spills out. And one of the craftsmen who made this ball explains that they were requisitioned to build it, but they didn't know what he was going to do with it. And so at some point the night before, he had crawled into this ball, which was completely a mirror inside. And so he could see himself from multiple angles. He could see everything in this perfect mirror, this perfect spherical mirror. And overnight, since he was trapped inside, he went to open the hatch, which would allow him to escape, and the handle broke off. So apparently the craftsmen were a little bit shoddy, but he is stuck in this overnight. And when he emerges from it in the morning after the friend has smashed it with a sledgehammer, he seems to not be present anymore. And the narrator and other people on the estate speculate that his experience in seeing the world in this perfectly spherical mirror where there's only mirror and light has caused him to go mad. And so I think one of the people on the estate say that maybe he glimpsed a realm that humans were never supposed to glimpse. Cool idea. The next one is the twins. This is another murder story. It seems like the psychological test, the cliff, and twins are every other one, and they're every other they're murder stories. The Red Chamber is also a murder story, but it has a twist in the end, so we'll get to that one. The twins is a confession. The person confessing has been arrested for murder. He killed somebody, and he planned to take, I think it was 2 million yen. It was some extravagant haul. He murdered somebody, and he got caught, and so he wants to confess to a priest before he dies. But his confession actually goes back way before the murder took place, to his first murder. Now, the killer in this case, the man confessing, he was born as a pair of twins. His brother and him, the only thing that marked them as different is that the man confessing, the one who's still with us, he had a mole on one of his thighs, and that's the only thing that marked them physically as different. And so he, when he was young, he started running out of money. He was very poor with money. He didn't want to work. His brother was always better with money. And so his brother was made the heir to the family fortune. And so the one confessing, he concocts an idea where he says, well, I'm going to go to Korea for work. And I will go make my own fortune, and I will come back when I'm older. But then he doesn't actually go. He dresses up as the responsible brother. He cuts off his mole so that nobody can identify him. And then he goes and he murders his brother, buries him in the lot where his brother lives, and then assumes his brother's identity. So nobody knows that his brother is missing, nobody knows that he is missing, and nobody knows that he has taken over his brother's identity. The man confessing says that he was in love with his brother's wife, but his brother's wife had been promised to his brother because of the fortune. So even though he and the wife liked each other, the wife was kind of pushed into marrying the husband. So he has kind of this fear that she's going to recognize him when they get to the bedroom that night, but she doesn't. So he's able to take over his brother's life. He is writing in his brother's journal, as that's one of his brother's habits. And he notices that there is a thumbprint on one of the pages in the journal. And he realizes that he can use his brother's thumbprint, because if anybody ever comes looking for him, they'll take the thumbprint and realize that he's not the one responsible, his brother is, and then he'll be able to throw off the police. So he keeps this thumbprint in case he ever needs proof. He makes a mold of it so that he can use it in emergencies. And then one day he comes to find out that he is bleeding money again. He was never good with money. His brother was the one who was good with money. And so he needs to somehow make money. And so he goes after one of his brother's close confidants. He knows that this person has money in a safe. He knows that this person trusts his brother and him because he's acting as his brother. And so one day when the confidant is going to place the money in the vault, he kills him from behind, and then leaves his brother's thumbprint at the scene of the crime so that his brother is framed for the murder. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out because the thumbprint on the journal was actually his thumbprint. When he examined it, he saw that it was a little bit different, but he thought that it was different enough that it was a different person's. But when the police took it, they looked at it and they realized that it was the negative of the murderer's thumbprint. Sucks to suck, I guess. The murderer confesses to the priest, and one of the things that he asks is, will you tell my wife what I've done? Because she has a right to know. And that's kind of where the story ends, realizing that he's been living out his life as his brother with his wife. The Red Chamber. This is the most fun story of the collection. The Red Chamber is about a kind of like rich, fancy club in which people come to tell stories, kind of like Alone in the Dark, where it's the Midnight Society telling stories around a fire, but it's a bunch of rich people who are just kind of bored. And so this man comes in, he starts telling stories. He says, I realized in my youth that murder doesn't always have to be like killing somebody. You can manipulate people into killing themselves. And so one of the stories he tells is there was an old blind man, and the old blind man he knew was very stubborn. So if you told him, hey, go to the left, he would go to the right. And so one day the old blind man was walking down the street, and he started walking near a pit to the right where they were doing construction. And the man telling the story says, hey, go to the left, you're in danger. And he says it kind of jokingly, like, hey, you're in danger, go to the left, knowing that the blind man will go to the right. And the blind man, of course, does, because he's stubborn. He goes to the right and he falls into this pit. And of course, the man who conspired to murder him is like, I didn't know that he was going to go to the right. I warned him, like he took his own life. I wasn't responsible for this. And he comes up with a bunch of stories like this. He's like, you know, if you tell somebody who is looking for a doctor, if you tell them, oh, go down to this street and go to this person, and he realizes later that, oh, it's the surgeon on the other street. That's the good doctor. I sent him to the bad doctor. When the man dies, he's not responsible because he told him to go to the doctor. He just told him to go to the wrong doctor. And there's a bunch of like little tales like this. He says that his biggest murder was derailing a train. He was walking along the train tracks and he pretended to stumble and he kicked rocks down onto the train tracks. And he went to the next town and he said, hey, I was hiking in the mountains here. I kicked these rocks down the hill onto the train tracks. You've got to wire over to the next town, tell them not to send a train until the rocks can be cleared. And the people at the police station say, well, that train has already been past that curve there. So if anything's happened to it, it's already been derailed. And he says that was my biggest one that killed 17 people. He says that he murdered one of his friends. They were diving into a small pond, and he, being a good swimmer and a good diver, knew that you had to pull out at the last moment in order to like avoid being crushed or breaking your neck on the rocks below. But the person he was diving with didn't know that. And so the person he was diving with dived in and hit his head on the bottom of the small lake and killed himself. A bunch of stories like that. And the man says, I've done all of these murders. I'm up to 99 murders in my lifetime. I want to do one more, and I want it to be me. And as he's telling the story, a waitress comes in and she's offering drinks to the rich men. And the man telling the story pulls out a pistol and fires it at her. And she gets scared and she drops to the floor. But when the rich men like turn on the lights and go to help her, she's perfectly fine. It was a blank. She was not injured at all. She was never in any danger. And so the man telling the story says, it was only a joke. You were never in any danger. Here, have the gun. And he hands it over to her. And she like playfully says, oh, it's a fake gun. I see. She points it at the man telling the story and pulls the trigger, and he falls over dead. He got his 100 murders, except he didn't, because a minute later, both he and the waitress start laughing. He rises to his feet. He says, gentlemen, everything I told you tonight was bullshit. I have never murdered anybody. The waitress did not murder me. I have not committed any of these murders. I hope that the story was entertaining for you. I hope that you all have gotten your money's worth. Good night. And both he and the waitress head out into the night, and the rich men gather around and they debate what they should do. And then they unanimously decide that they should disband. Fun story. I like the twist. Two crippled men. This one I think is probably, I'm not sure how to feel about this one either. Like, I like it. I feel like the main character, the narrator, should like realize something. The scene opens at a spa. There are these two men. One of them is an old war veteran, and he is disfigured, having fought in the war. And the other one is mentally disfigured. He says that he has some kind of disfigurement of the mind. So they're sharing their stories. The first one is telling him about being in battle and experiencing all this pain, and coming out the other side looking the way he does. And the second man says, you know, my story is really boring compared to yours. I went off to university, and while there, I started to sleepwalk. I was a somnambulist. And I had sleepwalked in my youth. I knew that I had a tendency towards it, but I didn't realize that it was continuing into adulthood. And so one night, my friend Tanaka, he told me that I burst into his room and I was talking to him in my sleep, although I had a strange look on my face where I didn't seem to be present. And he realized the next morning that I was sleepwalking. And that kind of like riled up my nerves. I didn't know what to do from that point. I was very afraid that if I was sleepwalking, I was going to do something bad. And other people started reporting that I was sleepwalking. One person saw me wandering the graveyard like a ghost. One person heard me rattling their door at night. I was super afraid that I was going to do something bad. And then the day came where I woke up and I found one of my boarding school mates' watches in my bedroom. And I went to them, I offered up the watch, I explained that I'm a sleepwalker, I didn't mean to do it, and they understood and they took it back. But from then on, I was afraid that I was going to do something very bad. And then the day came where the person who ran the boarding house where I was living, I woke up in the morning, I had a sack of his property, and he had been murdered. And in addition to him being murdered, he had one of my headbands in his possession. So the cops knew that I had done it. And I knew that I had done it because I woke up with his stuff and I was a somnambulist. I was sleepwalking and I didn't want to hurt anybody, but in my sleep, I managed to do it. And there was a trial, but my parents hired the best lawyers. My schoolmates, they came in, they testified that I was a sleepwalker, that I was a somnambulist. They all said that I was a gentle person. I did not want to hurt anybody, but in my sleep, I must have done this. So he tells the story to the first person. The first person kind of stares at him, and then he starts laughing. And the sleepwalker says, "What's so funny?" And the person that he's talking to, the war hero, he says, Let me provide you with a different theory for what happened with the murder. Let's say that your friend Tanaka, let's say that he grew to hate the boarding house leader for some reason, and he decided that he was going to murder him. In order to do that, he heard a rumor that you were a sleepwalker when you were young. And then he devised this plan to work you up into a frenzy so that you would think that you were going to hurt somebody in your sleep. And then he stole your housemate's watch and he placed it in your bedroom so that you would think that you were doing things without your own knowledge. And then he dressed up as a ghost and went and wandered the graveyard until somebody saw him, and they would naturally think that it was you. And he went and rattled your housemate's door, and he knew that the housemate would assume that it was you sleepwalking. And then finally, one day, he took one of your headbands and he went and murdered the boarding house man, the keeper. And then he came back and he put a sack of stuff from the boarding house keeper into your room so that naturally you would think that you had done it and the police would think that you had done it. And the sleepwalker, the second guy, he says, but if he did that, wouldn't his own conscience like stop him? Wouldn't he like be worried that I would be put to death? And the first person, the war hero, says, well, that's kind of the beauty of it, isn't it? He would have known that nobody would put you to death or send you to prison if you committed a crime in your sleep. Nobody would want to punish you for something that you had no control over. And so they would have never convicted you. And so it was the perfect murder. He got away with it and you walked free. The second one is, could that be true? Could my friend from college, could he have done this to me? And the first guy is like, I'm sorry to put such thoughts in your head. I'm going to go get out of here. I'm going to go back to the house. I'm going to go rest. It was nice speaking with you. And he like gets up, he puts on his stuff and he heads out. And as he's walking away, the second person, the sleepwalker, he realizes that this old war hero who has been scarred in battle is his old friend Tanaka. I like that twist. I like that story. It feels like there should have been a realization, right? It feels like there should have been something there. The last one is really cool. It's probably the most supernatural or supernatural coded of the stories. It's the traveler with the pasted rag picture. We have a narrator who is presented kind of as an unreliable narrator. He says that one day he was on a trip back from town to see these lights in the sky, these clouds in the sky, these mirages that exist in this town. But a bunch of his friends, a bunch of people he knows, would probably tell you he's never been to that town. So has he been to that town? Was it all a dream? Is what he's about to relate like real? And so he talks about going to this town and seeing the mirages in the sky, seeing the lights changing, seeing the clouds changing, seeing these images in the sky. And then he gets on this train to come home, and he's in the second class cart, and it's only him and one other person. And this traveler has a tablet wrapped in cloth, and he goes to one side of the cart on the opposite side from our narrator, and he sets the tablet on the table, and he undresses it, and then he sets the tablet up by the window so that it can see outside. The narrator starts to have this creeping feeling that something is kind of off about the other traveler. The other traveler has very like clean, dark hair, but his face is old, and there's this mismatch between them, this uncanniness to him. And he's not sure what the other one is doing with this tablet. He wants to know, like, what is this traveler's secret? And so eventually he gets up and he goes to the other side of the cart. And before he can speak, the traveler's like, you want to see the tablet, don't you? He's like, yes, please. And so the traveler turns around the tablet, and it's this carving of a woman, and she's sitting in the lap of her lover. And it's this old story of the woman and her illicit lover in the garden. And it's a very like famous story once you know it, but the lover is usually a young man. And in this carving, he's an older man. He has white hair, like silver white hair. He's old, he's aged. He looks about to be like about the same age as the traveler. So the traveler says, hey, you want to see something cool? He pulls out this pair of binoculars and he hands it over to the narrator. The narrator takes the binoculars and he goes to look at them. But the first time he goes to lift them, he's holding them the wrong way. And the traveler stops and he says, no, never do that. Don't do that. And our narrator is like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what I did to elicit that reaction. I'm sorry, I'll do it right. He turns the binoculars around and he looks through them, and the carvings on the tablet appear to be living. He says that he can see the woman breathing, he can see the blush on her skin, and he can see kind of the reaction of the man in whose lap she sits. And the traveler gets really excited. He's like, you saw them living, didn't you? And there our narrator is like, yes, I did. And the traveler is like, I'll tell you a secret. I'll tell you the story of the tablet. All right. And our narrator is like, yes, please tell me everything. So the story is that the traveler's brother one day started acting very strangely. He had been out in the city, and when he came home, he didn't want to eat. He didn't want to sleep. He seemed very nervous. His parents are afraid that like something has happened to him. His brother is worried about him. And so one day he goes to follow the brother. The brother has been leaving around noon and then coming home in the evening around dusk, as if he's working a job, but he doesn't seem to be like making any money. So what's he doing? And the brother is going to Tokyo Tower. He's climbing up into the tower so that he can see down into Tokyo. And his brother follows him up there. And when they're at the top, the brother turns around and sees the traveler. The older brother is like, what are you doing here? And the traveler says, I was worried about you. What are you doing? And the brother says, I was up here one day and I was looking through my binoculars and I saw the most beautiful woman that I've ever seen. And I just had to come back up here and see if I could find her again. I looked over at this nearby temple. I saw her just for a brief moment. Like, I'm not somebody who gets taken in by a pretty face, but something about this woman, it was just enthralling and I had to see her again. And so he's looking through these binoculars into the nearby temple and he spots her again. Around this time, a traveling cart like tips over and a bunch of balloons rise up into the Tokyo Tower like sightline. And the brother is like, come on, let's go. I saw her. We have to go find her. And they run down and they go to the temple and they're walking around. But this house that he has seen her in doesn't seem to exist anywhere. And for a moment, the younger brother is like, maybe he is like going mad. Maybe he's seeing things that aren't there. And then the brother realizes that it is one of the like puppet stands that line the temple. And he saw a house. The house that he saw was the stand that she has been placed in. And the woman that he has fallen in love with is the woman on this tablet. And so the younger brother is kind of relieved. He's like, we found her. You can come home now. And the older brother is like, but I want to stay with her and I don't know how to do this. And he says, I have an idea. take my binoculars and look through them the wrong way. So with the big lenses up to your eyes, the small lenses at the other side. So the younger brother like stands where he is. He lifts up the binoculars the wrong way, just as the narrator did previously or tried to do previously. And the younger brother is looking through the glasses at the older brother, and the older brother starts shrinking in his sight line. And he gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the younger brother just thinks, oh, well, he's moving away from me. So he appears to be getting smaller. But then a moment later, he lifts into the air and then disappears completely. And the younger brother pulls the binoculars away, and he's like, where did my brother go? And when he looks back at the tablet, he sees that the gentleman in the tablet has been replaced by his brother. And so he makes a deal with the person who owns the puppet stand. He says, hey, I would like this tablet. I want to pay you for it. And the person who owns the puppet stand is like, you bring me the money, I'll give you the tablet. So the young boy runs home to tell his parents, here's what happened. Here's what happened at Tokyo Tower. I know what my brother's been doing. I know where he is. I need money so that I can go buy this tablet. And his parents don't believe him, of course, because what are you talking about? Your brother is like in this tablet now. He's a carving. It's a wooden carving. What are you talking about? And so his father is like, oh, well, obviously the older son became infatuated with this girl and ran away. And then the younger son didn't know how to process that. And so he's made up the story. So eventually the younger son gets the money up and he goes and he purchases this tablet, and then he travels around with it because he feels like his brother and his sister-in-law deserve this travel. They deserve to see the sights. They deserve a honeymoon. All of these like things that he thinks about his brother and his sister-in-law. And so he talks about it, and the narrator looks at the tablet once again, and he thinks he sees like this blush on the faces of the two carvings. The traveler comes to a stop. He ties the cloth around the tablet, and he gets off the train, and the narrator is not sure, did I just see something supernatural, or is there like a logical explanation for it? Which I think is really cool. Because if you're a skeptic, you can say like, oh, the father was right. The older brother ran away because he was infatuated with this girl. The younger brother has made up this story about his brother becoming this tablet. But you believe in the supernatural, you can kind of say, yeah, the brother and the sister are part of the tablet. One thing that kind of gives credence to the traveler's story is that in the carving, the lover, the male lover, he's been aged, as I mentioned before. And the traveler mentions that because his brother is human and not a wood carving, he's going to age, but his bride never will. So eventually his brother is going to die. And this wooden woman will not. And I think that this story is really cool because it has so much depth, but also because it kind of reminds me of like people falling in love with AI chatbots, or people falling in love with hentai characters or manga characters, or people falling in love with like cartoon characters. Like, it's, even though it was written in the 50s, it still has this like persistent idea that carries forward even today. Men becoming infatuated with these things that aren't real and wanting to join them in this plane that doesn't exist. And I think that that's really cool. So yeah, that was Edogawa Ranpo's Japanese Tales of Mystery and Imagination. I hope that you guys enjoyed my talking about it. I really enjoyed this this collection. There are some thorny parts where I'm like, oh, I would have done that differently. But for a book from the 50s, like, it holds up surprisingly well. So if you guys are interested, I hope that you check it out. Maybe check out some other stories from Edogawa Ranpo, or his birth name is Hirai Tarō. So if you look him up, it's Hirai Tarō or Edogawa Ranpo. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all for joining me for another night of talking about books for probably far too long. I love you, and we'll see you in the next video. Good night.